What is up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Mets'd podcast, an international episode yet again. Still in Puerto Rico. James is still somewhere in Asia. We will never know. We'll never find out. There's no way to know. No way to possibly know. But we have some things to talk about. Big episode today. Soto and Lindor have arrived in Port St. Lucie. We also have a listener mailbag because this is kind of the weird time in spring training when the news is that people arrive. Otherwise, there's not much to really dissect and talk about. So we want to hear from you guys. We asked you guys to give us some questions, and you did. You gave us a ton of tweets. We really appreciate that. And I think that's pretty much it for the rundown of this episode. You got anything to say there, James, before I give the little spiel?
Yeah, it's just a lot of fun that the Mets are like so in the spotlight of Major League Baseball right now. Like we're getting tweeted out by the MLB main account every day. There has to be such a media frenzy right now at Port St. Lucie with Soto there. There's a lot of fun, but it's also like a good reminder that we are now the ones. Like we're now the guys. Like there's a lot expected of this team. Brandon Nimmo talked about it in the first like round of media availability. Like we are now the guys. Like we always talk about the last few years. Like we had a target on our back because of Steve Cohen and the way this team acted. Now we have a target on our back because we have the most expensive athlete in the history of Earth. So it's a very real thing. With the pressure comes a lot of responsibility. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and can't wait to talk about it with you guys. Make sure you are subscribed to the Mets'd Podcast YouTube channel over there. If you are listening to us, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, drop us a rating, drop us a review, download and subscribe. And don't forget to follow us on all our social media at Mets'd. Again, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. That's where you can get involved in these listener mailbag episodes in the future. So, James, where do you want to start off with? What's the first listener question we want to rock with?
I think we have to start with just like the bit of actual news we have, which is Jose Iglesias not on this team. The Mets have said openly he's not going to be on this team, but seems like he's still campaigning for himself to be on this team. Our first question comes from Big Heat at Big Heat 34. As good as Jose Iglesias was last year, do you think it's the right move to move on in favor of McNeil, Acuna, or Nick Madrigal as the backup second base shortstop on the roster? And I kind of just think yes. Like I know Iglesias was amazing last year, and Iglesias might be better in a vacuum than definitely Magical, possibly still Acuna, maybe McNeil for this season. But I just don't know if you can count on it. And if the reports were true that he was seeking a 2-year deal, I just don't think it's something the Mets can do with the glut of middle infield prospects they have that should be ready in the next few months.
Yeah, I mean, the Mets need those younger middle infield guys to take a step forward as well. Like, for this team to be at their best, they need guys like Acuna and Mauricio, and maybe even Brett Beatty if he's considered one of these middle infield guys if he plays second base, to have the ability to have some playing time, to get better. That will take this team possibly to that next level and can really help when we're spending $700 million on a guy like Juan Soto to have some of these younger guys who are free fill in the cracks. He definitely is going to be better than Nick Madrigal. I would be shocked if he's not, just because Nick Madrigal's almost never really been a good player at the major league level in terms of production. But at the same time, if he wants those multi-years, it's an unrealistic fit. I know he had like the lunch with John Heyman and he said a lot of things like, apparently he kept saying we and corrected himself to say the Mets, which that hurts my heart. That one hurts as like a Mets fan. And he talks about like unfinished business and how much he really loved the city and the team and everything like that. I get it. I totally understand. Given Nick Madrigal or Jose Iglesias, yes, I'm choosing Jose Iglesias every single time. I think he will be better. But the fact is that at the time when they needed to make the decision about where this roster was going, where it is, he wanted multiple years. If he takes a single-year deal, I think there's a chance that he still could come back with the Mets because I'm not confident in Nick Madrigal even making the team out of camp. I know he has, I think, a split contract right now between the majors and the minors. He's just never hit. He's never hit. He's been a pretty decent fielder. I think there's still a world where it could happen, but it's going to be strictly on the Mets' terms. And I don't know why Jose Iglesias would truthfully want to take like a 1-year deal like he did last year, where he might even start the year in the minors again.
Yeah, he was just too good for that. It kind of sucks that this has happened to Jose Iglesias a lot over the last few years. But there also is probably something to the fact that there's a value in this new version of the Mets, 2025 Mets, starting fresh in a way. Like, I know we brought back a lot of the same pieces of last year, especially like the big deal for Minaya, the small deal for Winker. But there probably is a value in not trying to start doing the same stuff as last year. You kind of can't keep the same thing rolling as a baseball team and expect the same kind of success. We've kind of seen that with the Phillies the last few years. I understand the same type of players, but this should be a season about the Mets somewhat turning a page. Like, I know it's about building on last year, but just to bring back, I don't know. Like, we've talked about this in the ballpark, whether or not they're going to maintain the Grimace stuff, whether or not now they're going to keep the OMG stuff. It seems like without him, there's probably not. There probably is a piece of David Stearns' mind. It's just like when you come back to school after the long summer break, sometimes like things just have to change a little bit. You have to come in with a fresh new outlook. And I think that that might be a silver lining with Iglesias not coming back. Because I think in terms of production, the other guys, especially Acuna and McNeil, hopefully Mauricio in a few months, can be as good as Iglesias was last year. Maybe not as good as Iglesias was last year because he's like one of the best hitters in baseball. But that was also just something that I don't think we can bank on to happen again. But I do think that there needs to be something of a page turning happening with this Mets team going into 2025.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens moving forward. And if there's anything, of course, we will talk about it again. But we do have another question here from Kevin Martello, who says, with Jeff McNeil expected to start the season at second base, how do you foresee the Mets managing the development and potential integration of infield prospects like Luis Angel Acuna, Ronnie Mauricio, Brett Beatty, and Jet Williams? I think, honestly, the way that they're going to do it, like, it seems like Mauricio is going to start the year in AAA no matter what, based on when he's going to be ready for games, when he's going to be able to actually, like, be ready to go. He hasn't played baseball in a year. Seems like AAA is inevitable. Brett Beatty is the guy that is a little bit interesting because I don't know where his spot is on the Major League roster right now, even if he can truthfully play second base, just because him and McNeil both are left-handed batsmen at that position. I guess he could still technically play third and maybe help out Vientos against some matchups here and there, but it feels like Beatty's another guy who's going to start the year in the minors. Doesn't really seem like there's a path for the Major League level. Jet Williams obviously going to be in the minors with that weird year last year with the injuries. And from everything that we've talked about with Jet and heard about with Jet, it seems like they're just going to continue to try and make him be a middle infielder who can also play a little bit of center field and keep trying him out there in the outfield. Acuna is the guy that's kind of the wild card where if he has a good camp, he's going to make it. I think they want him to be able to win that job. I think they're really looking forward to seeing him win that job, which is why a guy like Madrigal has that option contract. But at the end of the day, he does still have to prove it. And at the Major League level, while he was successful, it's an incredibly small sample. That almost means nothing. Almost.
Yeah, and I think this question plays off the next question from Andrew Matney at Midnight Matney. Assuming Taylor, Winker, Torrens, and Marte are 4 of the 5 bench spots, who out of Acuna, Beatty, Madrigal is the best chance at the final spot? And I think that you have to think about these questions in tandem because you just have limited bench spots in the Major League roster, and some players have options, some players don't. And as we keep circling how this Mets roster probably is the best version of itself, you kind of keep coming back to Starling Marte. And Starling Marte has been excellent in the media the last few days. He said that Stearns and Mendoza were very upfront with him, being like, you don't have a starting spot in this team right now. Like, you just simply don't. Like, Juan Soto's here. Winker's back as the heavy platoon, as a strong side DH because the left-handed bat. Like, you're going to get chances because that always happens in baseball season. Guys get hurt. Things change. But right now, you don't have the spot. But with McNeil having the ability to play the outfield on the bench, and with Acuna probably having some ability to play outfield on the bench, I know it's not – I don't know how comfortable they would be there at the Major League level, but I know you could probably do a little bit. Marte is the guy who does seem extraneous to this roster. There probably is a point this season where – because, again, of course someone's going to get injured. Someone's pulling a hamstring. Someone's rolling an ankle. It's baseball.
Might be Starling Marte.
Yeah, it's a good chance it's Starling Marte winds up at the end of the day. But he's the one right now where if he's not on this team, suddenly you start seeing a lot more playing time for these young players, which might just mean there's not a lot of playing time to shake out for these guys for another full calendar year. And I think that is also something else to remember. Just prospects sometimes take a while to develop. Brett Beatty is someone who may have come to the Major Leagues a little too quickly. Francisco Alvarez is maybe someone who came to the Major Leagues a little bit too quickly. It's not the worst idea to kind of treat these players like some other organizations do, where you leave them in the minors until, 23, sometimes even 24 years old. And he's just like, then they're ready. Because that's how old I think Brett Beatty is right now. He might have turned 24 last season, but it's just like there's such a push and pull with when prospects get playing time and how they develop that we have to pump our brakes sometimes, because sometimes a Major League player like Starling Marte or Jeff McNeil, who might only be league average bats, are more worth having than a prospect who might be a little bit more inconsistent over time.
Yeah, and I think right now, unless there's a trade that really, anybody wants Starling Marte in a trade, I think the Mets will make that, and I think it's cool that they also told him that they're going to be looking to do that, and he seems to be very open to it and not making a big problem about it. So, yeah, if we could find a way to not have Starling Marte on this roster, it definitely opens up a ton and really would help with the roster construction on the bench.
Would you trade Starling Marte for Marcus Stroman, 1-for-1, 1-year deals?
Oh, yeah, I think I would. Is that crazy?
I don't think I would. I wouldn't do that. I still wouldn't do that. Absolutely.
The one thing I will say is Stroman has the vesting option if he actually pitches this year. So then I definitely don't want that. But in a vacuum, I don't know. I'd take a year of a pitcher than $20 million going to a backup outfielder who's going to play every 4 days.
Yeah, I guess I don't know, but still, it's still just a bad situation all around. I do think this also again now ties in to the next question we got from our guy here, Frankie Peppers. I'm going to read this in French.
How's that New Year's resolution going for you? The fad diets or the BS resolutions are so out. How about just spending less on your wireless bill, Kratz?
Mint Mobile to the rescue. Scotty, they've got half off their 3-month unlimited plan. That's 3-month plan for only $15 a month, baby.
All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network.
Switching is easy. They'll convert your current phone and phone number for you too.
Switch to Mint and new customers can get half off an unlimited plan until February 2nd. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/territory. That's mintmobile.com/territory.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on their first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
I'm going to read this in Frankie's parlance because I would have to do the English justice. Hello, boys. I have a question. Are there any prospects you think can win Rookie of the Year like Pete Alonso with a Z? We have a lot of prospects. A lot of them are good ball players. But can any be that good? Thanks, boys. I honestly think no. I truly think not right now. It doesn't feel like it. I think we're probably still a year or two away from a Mets prospect that can come up and actually win Rookie of the Year. I think the two that can are probably Jet Williams. Then I'll just give the credit to shout to my boy Jesus Baez, who our guy Sam also asked next question. Where's Jesus Baez's long-term home? Because I think that there could be a maneuvering of finagling next few years where Jet can wind up being the center fielder on this team, where Jesus Baez can wind up being the third baseman on this team. And with the new rules for a player, I don't know, but service time and calling guys up early, having players place in Rookie of the Year is really, really helpful for teams. You get more compensatory draft picks next year, higher compensatory draft picks. So I think I have anyone in the Mets farm system. I guess Carson Bench too, but it's just our best prospects right now are pitchers, or at least our best impact prospects, and Rookie of the Year is just not a pitcher award. So it will be hard for the Mets to, and there's a lot of major prospects in baseball, so it might be hard for the Mets to sneak into one of these.
Yeah, in terms of this year, I think Acuna is really the only guy that would have any sort of shot, and that's if Jeff McNeil has a terrible spring training, Luis Angel Acuna wins the job, and then plays about as well as goes ballistic. I think it's going to be pretty unlikely that the Mets get a Rookie of the Year in 2025, and honestly, Frankie, don't care. I don't care if we get a Rookie of the Year. I'm worried about those wins and losses in the column, and if there's no rookies helping us do that, I'm smiling ear to ear. I don't care.
And also, before 2019, we never would have said Pete Alonso was going to win Rookie of the Year. So, truthfully, anything can happen here. But I think Pete was a bit of a unicorn looking back. So now we got next question here from the Weenie Warden, which is, that's a hell of an at right there. But why is Nimmo batting fourth such a popular idea? I don't get it. I think there's a few reasons Nimmo batting fourth. I personally want Nimmo batting third. I think Nimmo's being a little underrated right now in terms of who the Mets hitters are. He's coming off 4 straight years of an 800 OPS, 130 WRC plus, and he had 150 WRC plus the first half last year before plantar fasciitis took his lower body from him. Brand Nimmo is probably still the second best on-base threat on this team. Lindor's going to bat first because it worked so well last year. But if you're optimizing the lineup, like maybe it still is actually Nimmo, which is kind of crazy to say out loud. I think Lindor should be. He was so good last year, and that's a perfect spot for him because of the way he takes at bats. Just the way he gets on base so much and the power Nimmo has shown when he's been healthy, I think anywhere in the middle of the order makes sense for him. And just as my little aside for the fourth spot, it's the spot in the lineup besides first that leads off the second most times over the course of a major league season. So that's your second leadoff right there. So I think that makes sense for it, but that's me just being tongue-in-cheek and kind of being an asshole. I think he's such a good hitter that almost any spot makes sense for him.
Yeah, I think we get very caught up in how old school baseball used to be with all these spots where it's like leadoff is supposed to be your fast guy, and then 2 is supposed to be the guy who puts the ball in play. 3 is your overall best hitter, where now we know that 1 is supposed to be kind of like 1 and 2 are your best hitters essentially on the team usually. Like look at what the Dodgers did. Obviously Shohei Ohtani's a freak of nature, and he's not on every single team here. But you want to have your best guys get the most at-bats possible. That's why the Mets are going to go Lindor and Soto 1-2. And then 3, like that weird fact that we saw or stat a couple days ago during this week where someone tweeted out how the 3 spot comes up with nobody on base and 2 outs more than any other spot in Major League Baseball, and it's not even particularly close. The next highest is a couple thousand plate appearances behind, which is an insane thing to say. So it's like actually putting your best hitter 3 would be a waste because he comes up with nobody on and 2 outs as many times as possible. So maybe you put a guy like Pete Alonso there because he can do the most damage possible by hitting home runs, or it's a Mark Vientos, whatever it's going to be. But Nimmo in the 4 spot does make sense again because of that on-base ability, and he does have pop in that bat. It's sneaky pop, and like you said, at the beginning of the year last year, we started to see it. Nimmo was low-key on pace for like 30 home runs last year in the first half. So if he stayed healthy, that was a guy who you would look back and be like, wow, I can't believe Brand Nimmo in the 4 spot really makes so much sense.
And these are amazing first world problems just because the Mets lineup is now suddenly really, really good. Like we used last year, we were like, does Nimmo make sense? 1 or 3 or 4? Like I don't really know where Lindor's going to wind up with Pete and everything. But now we have 5 legitimately projectable, awesome hitters on this team. So it's a really fun problem to have trying to figure out where they all fit. And also, we saw Mendoza last year. There's going to be some tinkering. Like there was a lot of tinkering last year with this lineup. And we kind of think that was when he was still getting his footing as a manager, and it seems like this team really hit their stride when he stopped tinkering. So maybe that's like I don't know if that's like a lesson learned from Mendoza or it's just finding out where the comfort is for these guys. Because even someone like Mark Vientos, I think it's really important where he hits this year. Because while there's not much pressure on him now with the return of Pete Alonso, Juan Soto, and everything, he's someone who I think has a very wide range of outcomes for how good he can be. And he's someone who the lineup construction might matter a lot for. Not that we should be making the lineup in a way that Mark Vientos has the best chance for success, but I think the difference between him hitting 3, 4, or 5 could drastically impact the pitches he sees and how many run-scoring opportunities he has and kind of how he progresses as a player. So I just think that the lineup we see on opening day might not be the lineup we see on June 1st, and I think that we're going to have to give these guys space just to make sure everyone can find their niche before they really get in the flow.
Like Vientos coming up with no guys on and outs is like the worst case scenario. I feel like for his progression next season, where it's like if you hit Nimmo 4, you hit Pete 3, you hit Vientos 5, all of a sudden he's going to have Brandon Nimmo on base a bunch of times, 35, 36% of the time, in front of him when he comes to the plate. I think that would be huge for Vientos, force him to throw strikes, and I think that's partially part of the reason why you want Brandon Nimmo as well to hit 4th, is it can very much help Mark Vientos moving forward.
Yeah, again, he's going to get on base more often than Vientos. Again, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm excited to see how this first looks. This is going to be one of the most in tune to spring training games I'm going to be in a very long time.
Oh, yeah.
So I literally want to see what order, because they're not all going to play every spring training game, but what order Carlos Mendoza has any of the starters in general. Because I think that's going to give us some pretty good insight to who could be hitting where, when, and why.
We've got another question here from Obi-Wan Kenari, and he says, the Mets were 18th in attendance last year. Do you think they can break the top 10 this coming season? You guys go to a lot of games. Are ticket prices too high, or fans only going to games when the team is well above 500? I don't think the ticket prices are truthfully the problem. I think the problem is, one, getting to Citi Field is difficult. It's not an easy stadium to get to. Like, yes, it's in New York City, and yes, you could hop on the 7 line. Like, that's the big sell here. Is like, oh, only one train to get to the game. But, like, 75% of people who go to the game, I don't think, are able to just get on one train. If you're coming from New Jersey, you got to take some form of transportation to then get to the 7 line, which is also not at Penn Station. It's not the direct train line that gets there. Also, parking is insanely expensive. The food is insanely expensive at the game. It's just a really costly experience. And for me and James, it works out really well because we can buy cheap tickets and we know what we're doing in the stadium and where to go and what seats are good and what days to go. And we can buy tickets 25 minutes before the game starts because we live so close to the stadium. It's not a problem for us to get there. Whereas for other people, it is a planned thing. This is an event. This is a day that they make out of it. It's not easy, and especially if you're a family or if you're going with more than just one person, it becomes a really, really expensive day.
And I do hope the Mets continue a lot of what they did last year. And the year I think they were planning for their team to, just excuse my French, kind of be shit and like have a lot of these deals for fans, like half off parking day, I think on Tuesdays in the summer, the $5 hot dog nights, the $5 beer nights, like having events like that, I think really, really helps people. Like it helps acquiesce people into the ballpark. Sometimes you wind up spending more money when beers only cost $5 because you'll buy 4 instead of 1. But it's just, you feel better doing it. It's more fun. You feel like the team's in there with you. Like we've seen a lot of teams around the league have like cheap concessions or cheap drinks or like nice deals like that. I think the parking one was a big deal too. Just having $20 parking instead of what it was $40 parking is a massive deal because a lot of these fans come from New Jersey, like you said, and it's so hard to come to games from New Jersey. My dad will come to 15, 20 games a year from New Jersey, and I literally can't fucking believe it because you're either bound to the NJ Transit schedule from Penn Station where there's a train at 10:28 and 11:28. And if you miss the 11:28, it's like 1:08. So then you're just sitting in Penn Station for an hour in the middle of the night, and you got work the next day.
Yeah, and if you're coming from Citi Field, you're getting on the 7. It drops you off at Grand Central. You then have to either get on another train, or Times Square. You have to get on another train, or you got to book it. It's like it's not streamlined at all to get to Citi Field. Yankee Stadium, they got it made in the sky.
You have to book it down 6th Avenue at 11:14 at night when the game went. I mean, the games are shorter now, which actually helps us a lot. But it's not that easy. So I do think last year the Mets
maybe. That could also hurt it too. I think there's a lot of people that are like, I'm not going to spend $500 to go see them play 2 hours and 10 minutes when I'm going to drive. It's going to take me 2 hours in transportation.
Yeah, literally, and cost me the $40 in parking to get there. But I think there's a lot of things. But I do think that Ari's right where the team being better helps a lot. Like I think just the Juan Soto factor, I'm sure you included, they sold a lot more season tickets this year because he's going to be in the ballpark. And I know just me, again, to the people in the city, it's a much better sell at 5:45 on Wednesday. They'd be like, yeah, I'm going to go to Citi Field tonight. And again, like sometimes you got if you don't want to go there and break the bank, you just pack the Tupperware like I do. Like bring some food, bring a sandwich. Like make sure you bring your one closed water bottle because you can do all that and you can make the game experience a lot cheaper and be able to do more games. A lot of people like doing the food. Citi Field is probably some of the best food in the stadium.
Here. There might be a TikTok here of like how cheap can we get to a Mets game?
Yeah, that's true. I think I could do it with $0. $0.00.
$0 would be impressive. I don't know if you could spend $0 and get to a game and have food. That would be impressive.
Oh, and have food and bring my own food though. Unless I'm saying how much I charge for my own food myself. But again, if you want to go to a lot of the games, there are ways, but it's just not really for the faint of heart. But if you guys are city dwellers like Mark and I, let us know. Well, we're going to be at like 20, 30 games this year, easy.
I'm going to be at like 50. I have season tickets. But yeah, I'm going to throw this out there too. SNY is also really fucking good. Like Gary, Keith, and Ron are awesome. So like for a lot of people, it's like, do I really want to go through all this when the best seat in the house, quite literally, is watching SNY every single night?
But also on the other side of that, like what they do in stadium for Citi Field for the casual baseball fan is also pretty cool. There's tons of games, there's tons of songs, there's tons of interactive stuff. Like it's just this. The Mets have a really good experience, and we know that they're really working on fan engagement. They want as many people in that ballpark as consistently as possible. And it's also fun to be in the ballpark all summer. Like we kind of have our Citi Field friends at this point. Yes. Like, shout out to my guy Jordan Simpson, Mets Music, who gave me a knob watch on Jeff McNeil swinging a new bat this weekend. Like our guy Marcelo hit me up for my birthday this week. I was just like I missed my Citi Field friends. I'm so excited to get back in the ballpark like 30, 40 times a year and have them. But it's also understanding that. Shout out Vic, of course. Vic's our guy. Shout out the original Keith Hernandez. We miss Keith in the ballpark. But
yes, of course.
It's hard to – we understand how hard it is to go to multiple games a year. So that's why a lot of you guys also are far away. Getting to your one game a year is awesome. Being there one time, you can circle that game and like support this team is really great. Just being in the Citi Field, I feel like gives you such a different experience to the Mets. So even if you're a fan that's far away, getting there once is really, really worth it.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a lot of fun as someone who's been to quite a few games over the last few years. All right, we got another question here from our boy Connor. Shout out Q. Assuming the Mets are in the playoff run down the stretch, who do you realistically see being the sixth-man rotation if they go to that in late August going into September? I'm gonna default this one to you, James, as the pitching man.
I want to pull this question off the next one we got from Jordan Cabeza. And that is, it's most likely the Padres aren't going to trade Cease or Michael King. By the deadline, is Sonny Gray an under-the-radar number 2 we could acquire? Because I do think if the Mets want to get where they're going, they need to make a trade at some point. I really do think that's the honest truth. And I don't think Sonny Gray is really the guy, as Jordan's saying, because one, I know the Cardinals president of baseball operations, John Mozeliak, went up to all their veterans in the beginning of the offseason. He was like, we're going to rebuild. You guys want to waive your no-trade clause? And Sonny Gray said no. So that means he's just ready to stay there, stick it out. And also, the NL Central is so bad, I think the Cardinals kind of stick in the race for a while. Like I think they probably are like a 76-win team, so they're probably not out of it by the trade deadline. So then I think the Mets 6-man rotation will still start with Sean Manaea, Kodai Senga, hopefully, health notwithstanding, and hopefully we'll still have Clay Holmes and Frankie Montas in the rotation because we still have faith in those guys. And then I think it starts to get hairy. I think we believe in David Peterson, but I still wouldn't be shocked if there's a bit of regression there. And then while the 6th spot is going to be kind of rotating and floating around most of the year, the trade guys I'm going to be watching going into this season are probably anyone in the Marlins, whether we see something crazy for Sandy Alcantara happen. Pablo Lopez is another guy I like a lot. Funny, former Marlin, but over there in the Twins now. And then maybe one more guy, one more team. I think I would watch to see the Diamondbacks, how, again, Zach Gallen shakes out, because I don't know. That division is going to be a dogfight, and someone's going to have to fall out of it, and it could be them, but I'm not counting on it. But I'm curious if you think there's another trade target. Because maybe Brandon Sproat established himself, but I still think that he would have to really like put the screws in to be a full member of like the playoff rotation. Because I'm thinking about the crunch time rotation when Connor asked about the 6-man rotation then. And I think about the playoff rotation. It's hard for me to see Sproat fully establishing himself in the first year as being that guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're like starting to get crazy scenarios, like if the Astros stink, which I think is a super possibility, like Framber Valdez is available, and I think that's someone that the Mets would take a look at just because he's been one of the best pitchers in baseball over the last 3-4 seasons. I mean, out west is kind of just a crapshoot in general. Like if the Rangers stink, do they try to start selling off some pieces? If the Mariners, I don't think they will either because that division's so up for grabs. But, in this crazy world, it's just like, where can we find these guys? And truthfully, it's just about, like, are there going to be teams that are way underperforming expectations and have a chance to get rid of some dead money on guys like a Framber Valdez, per se, or even like a Dylan Cease if the Padres were to stink it up as bad as they possibly could.
But they have to stink. They have to stink for that to happen. 'Cause this team is still definitely going for it. Like, it's very annoying that the teams with the expendable pitchers who might stink all happen to be in the central divisions where no one's really going to be out of them. 'Cause you just need to be 500. Like, I weirdly think that there's a chance that, like, Seth Lugo gets moved at the trade deadline this year. Michael Wacha, 2 former Mets of very different ilks. But I don't know how the Royals can be bad. But I don't know if they can be bad enough to actually fall out of faith in that division. Like, I don't know.
Do the Tigers move Jack Flaherty on his weird little contract that he signed if they stink? Yeah, like, I don't know. It's very bizarre, and it's tough because the pitching market really is so dictated about team success, and you can't really figure out who's going to get traded until you realize teams are out of it and guys who are expiring contracts.
Yeah, I also want to shout out Jordan because he asked 2 other questions. He asked if we think Minaya, I guess he's asking me, if you think Minaya needs a third pitch against lefties with the 2-seamer and the sweeper or the slider. I honestly think no. Like, those 2 pitches are so disgusting against lefties. Like, he worked with a sweeper a lot last year, then he kind of went away from it when he changed the arm angle. I think it kind of added extra lift on it, but didn't have much velocity, so it wasn't that effective. So I do wonder if he goes back with it. And he asked me about the opportunity for Frankie Montas to add a sweeper. I do think that's something that could be kind of cool. His gyro slider got a little bit more sweeper-ish last year, but he also has the cutter that kind of blended into the little gyro slider. So his cutter also has a little bit of lift. So I wonder if there's a sweeper in there because Montas has shown the ability to pick up pitches in the past, and I think that's something he can definitely do. I just wonder because he's kind of changed his slider around a lot the last few years. And he only just brought it back in a meaningful way last season. So I do wonder if that's something in the cards. It's just as something else he could do against righties. But I don't think he also just has a lot of tools. So it would be a nice addition, but I don't think it's necessary for him to have.
That's fair. Yeah. No, I mean, pitching is going to be super fluid, I think, as it was last year, and it will continue to be, I think, throughout the tenure of David Stearns. That's just kind of been his thing. He's always got a very, very fluid pitching rotation, bullpen, whatever it will be. And speaking of which, our boy Juan Piece is really embracing the glob of chaos. He asked if you could sign any random reliever to add to the glob of chaos, who would it be? So, James, who's your guy first off?
There's one more out there who I think is holding out because he doesn't want to be in the glob of chaos, if any team's glob of chaos, because it looks like a really good pitcher. He used to have some of the best stuff in baseball. It's Lucas Sims.
Lucas Sims, I knew it.
Of course. I mean, Driveline posted a video of him a few days ago where he's throwing 98 miles an hour, has 300,000 impressions. Every single front office in baseball saw that video. So everyone's talking to him, but I'm sure he doesn't want a camp invite. I'm sure he wants a major league contract. So that's kind of a cop-out for me, but like he's throwing 89-mile-an-hour sweepers and 98-mile-an-hour fastballs. Like he could be literally a key setup man in any bullpen in baseball. But it seems like to me that he wants a real job, and that's why he hasn't done it yet. But if I had to take a pick for a new Glob of Chaos guy or one more to add before the end of the offseason, it's 100% Lucas Sims.
Yeah, I was going to go with Amir Garrett, but he got signed actually by the Blue Jays on a minor league contract today, so I can't do that one because he's changed his arm slot and is still throwing 98 from the left side, which is fascinating stuff. So
Jamie Arnold?
Yeah, that would have been really cool. Shout out Jamie Arnold, absolutely tearing it up at FSU. But yeah, Amir Garrett would have been my pick. Unfortunately, he's not, so I'm not prepared. So I don't have an answer. Sorry. Lucas Sims is a good one.
Moving on now, we have a question from Shannon, who's still holding out hope as the #1 Mark Cannon enthusiast on Mets Twitter. Shout out Shannon. She's the girl. Do you think Francisco Alvarez locks in offensively this year? I think we just kind of have to say yes. Like, we have to be as positive as we possibly can about Alvarez. And I think a big reason for that is we say it all the time. I'm never going to stop saying it. For a catcher his age, he's one of the most experienced in the history of baseball. Most plate appearances ever for a catcher before turning 23 years old. They're tied for the second most home runs. Like, this is someone who, just based on historical precedent alone, should still be considered to have like the super elite ceiling that we've always said. And he just looks like JD Martinez in the box right now. I say he's been working with JD. His follow-through looks a lot like JD. And Alvarez's big struggle through the early part of his career has been kind of figuring out what to do with the outside pitch. That was JD's specialty. So maybe there's some wisdom that JD bestowed upon Alvarez that has helped him figure out how to handle the outer third of the plate.
Yeah, I think this is kind of a little bit of prospect fatigue in a way where it's like just because Francisco Alvarez wasn't Juan Soto, Ronald Acuna when he came up immediately and wasn't an MVP caliber player as a 21, 22-year-old that people start to doubt him. While the numbers haven't been where we had hoped, I still think there's a lot of really good stuff in his game, and it'd be crazy to give up any sort of hope on this guy at this point, especially because he talked about even just like the mental side of things. Like, he's still so young, and he's playing professional baseball when a couple of years ago he was like trying to figure out how to speak English Like there's a lot of stuff that he's learning and figuring out. And I think just as more and more time goes by, he's going to get more comfortable, more acclimated at the plate. And I think at some point we will see that Francisco Alvarez that we once thought we could.
And again, this is also going back to what we talked about early in the show about prospects coming up soon, late, just right. He's going to have almost 1,000 more plate appearances than Adley Rutschman before Adley Rutschman debuted in the major leagues. And Adley's a different prospect than Alvarez. He hit the ground running. He was number 1 overall pick. Like, he was a phenom. But it's just, he's a catcher. He's going to be a 23-year-old catcher on opening day, and he'll be a 23-year-old catcher on the last day of the World Series. So that's just it. He's so young for what he is still. And on top of all that, a lot of the big projection systems still like him. The Bat X, which is usually the most accurate for hitters, still has him as a league average bat. ATC, which has been the most accurate overall the last few years, shout out Ariel Cohen, big Mets fan, they have him as a 107 WRC plus guy with 20 homers. And like Oopsie, which is new projection from friend of the pod, Jordan Rosenblum, got him at a 115 WRC plus, 25 homers and 320 on base percentage. Like, if he hits 20 homers with a 310 on base percentage this year, that's still a massive win for the 7th spot of the lineup for a 23-year-old catcher, who's a really good defender now. That's almost a 3-4 win player, pretty fucking easily. So I think that it's about managing expectations for Francisco Alvarez while still giving him a beat, while also realizing that he still has the star potential and the star charisma and bravado and moniker. Like, him walking into spring training after getting pelted by the Dodgers in the playoffs last year, being like, we're better than them, we're coming for them again right now.
Crazy. Like,
that's the shit we want. Like, Jeff McNeil had a great quote because people asked him about World Series aspirations the first media availability of spring training. He's like, of course. He's like, if it's the first day of spring training, you're not thinking about the World Series. You're not you're not doing the right job. Like, you have to be thinking about that right now. If it's not, you're crazy. So I love that Alvarez is bringing that to this roster right now.
Yeah, he always does. He's the man who brings the testosterone, as we say. Him and Starling Marte. It's now really more so on Francisco Alvarez's shoulders. But looking forward to what he can do in 2025. Another question here from the Whipmaster, who asks us, if you could add any current former Met position player to this team before the season start, who would it be? If you want to do a pitcher as well, you can do it, but you can't do DeGrom, Wheeler, or Lugo. So former Met that's currently a position player on this team. I mean, I
think he means any player just currently in baseball.
Yeah, no, I think it's any current former Met position player. So they had to have played for the Mets prior that's currently playing baseball.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. But I don't think it's just position players. I think it can be pitchers as well.
Well, he did position player. He said position player, and then the next one he said you can also do a pitcher as well.
Okay, all right, yeah. You go, because I got to think about this one.
Center field would be the one kind of weak spot right now for this team. I mean, there's not a lot of great former Mets right now floating around.
No, not many. I think the only ones are the pitchers that were actually named there. I think, like, oddly, like a weird one would maybe be like Michael Wacha.
Michael Wacha would be awesome on this
like,
team.
he's weirdly one I'd love to have on this team. Again, that's not a sexy answer. It's not that fun. The Mets haven't exactly had a good center fielder since Carlos Beltran was traded away, so it's not really easy to pick one right
You
there.
watch your mouth around Angel Pagan. You throw some respect on
that's
his
true.
name.
Yeah, 3-time World Series champion Angel Pagan. I guess Cespedes, but he's not in the league anymore. I mean, it seems like the last regime of the Mets kind of had players when no one else really wanted them, so it's hard to pick guys. Like, I don't know, Daniel Vogelbach just got hired to be an assistant to the hitting coach for the Pirates.
Yeah, it's
I don't think anyone wants him.
crazy.
Mark Cannon doesn't have a job.
Holderman?
Yeah, maybe Colin Holderman. Eduardo Escobar doesn't have a job. Like, the Mets don't exactly have a lot of high-level players floating around besides Lugo, Wheeler, DeGrom right now. And again, I think Lugo oddly is a trade candidate for the Mets, which is kind of a funny thing to say out loud. But there's not really a lot of juice out there. I don't know. Tommy Pham instead of Starling Marte. Like, is that where we go here? Like, it's hard to.
Oh, can I say Michael Conforto?
I guess, yeah. Instead of Starling Marte.
Yeah, instead of Starling Marte, I'd rather just have Michael Conforto. I think that's maybe the best pick on the offensive side. Pitching side, it's like it's all bullpen arms. I memean, I will never say Paul Sewald, so that's not going to happen. But there's not many options on the pitching side, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, it's just a tough question. But I also think I wanted to include this question because it shows the Mets have made some pretty good personnel decisions the last few years. Now that we have an adult as our executive, so that's a really nice thing that we have. All right, next question from our guy Prof Yoshima. So for some people new to the podcast, we do a bit in the regular season. We call it the Media Marvels. We'll go around Major League Baseball. Sometimes it takes about the Mets, and sometimes it just takes about baseball in general, and we'll kind of highlight those as being some of the true take artisans of our time, kind of throwing some fun at them. So Yoshima's question was, predictions, who will be the first Media Marvel of the 2025 season? And I'll be honest with you, I can see this one very clearly right now. I have a pretty good sense of who this is going to be. It's going to be one of two guys. They both have the same first name. It's either going to be Mike Francesa or Michael Kay.
Ooh,
it's going to be one of those two.
It's going to be about Juan Soto, right?
I think the Yankees are going to open up a series against the Brewers and go belt to ass. I think they're going to crush Freddie Peralta, who's a regression candidate. I think they're going to crush Nestor Cortez from knowing him for a few years. I think they're going to put up something like 25 runs in 3 days. And I think Juan Soto might strike out like 6 times in his first 3 games in Met. And then we're going to hear takes. They're going to start by Michael Kay, and then probably some of the talking heads around there. Maybe Keith McH, somewhere around here, where he's going to say something. Keith McP. The Yankees lineup is better without Juan Soto. I mean, the Yankees team looks so together, cohesive. They're having fun playing baseball again. You're going to see like Volpe and Judge laughing, having a good time, and we're going to have those takes. And then June 1st, the Mets are probably going to have the second or third best offense in baseball. The Yankees are still going to be a good team, but you're going to see, of course, the Mets, everything work out, and I think that's going to be my prediction for the first Media Marvel.
I mean, I have to go tried and true. The whole reason we started Media Marvels, I still got to go with Buster Olney. I mean, the guy just lives to hate the Mets. I'm sure he's going to put out some sort of anti-Mets propaganda at some point before even maybe opening day. If Juan Soto strikes out in his first spring training at bat, he might say something about like worst contract ever handed out. I think it's going to be Buster Olney. That's why we started Media Marvels. If it's anybody else, I would be surprised. I don't know. Reporter-wise, it's probably like Martino and Puma are the highest on the odds tier list.
I don't know, I still love Puma. Puma's an OG, but I think that's probably the group of who we could have as the first Media Marvel. So if you guys are new to the podcast this offseason, get ready in the regular season because once a week we're giving some Media Marvels. Those are going to be a lot of fun at the end of an episode. But next question from Ethan Briggs. This is a fascinating one. I don't know where I'm going to go with this. I don't know where you're going to go either. If you could give David Stern's truth serum, what is one thing you'd ask him?
I would ask him how many episodes has he listened to of the Mets'd podcast because we know he's listening. No, the real question I would ask is, what are players that like what are some trades that almost happened that didn't happen within like your time so far with the Mets? I would want to know that.
Okay. That's a good one. I was definitely going to ask him what was their first conversation like with Buck Showalter and then I would ask him what was your honest envisioned role for Billy Epler?
I was going to say too, like, so were you making decisions behind the scenes before you were hired still? Because it seemed like you were with Buck Showalter being fired.
I guess if we had truth serum, we'd ask him, when did you and Steve come to this agreement? Like, I think if you have truth serum, tampering no longer exists. So I want to be like,
yes.
How soon did Steve Cohen tamper with you? When did you know this was going to happen?
When's the first time you reached out to Juan Soto?
When's the first time Steve Cohen reached out to you? I think those would be the 2 questions I would definitely want to ask David Stearns if we have truth serum.
No, I think we'd get some good answers out of him. It would be fascinating to find out. And then the last question we got for this listener mailbag comes from Theo. He said, James, I'm still waiting for that pen. What does that even mean? You
the last listener mailbag, he asked me the best bullpen that we can make. I think just from players who have never been named All-Stars. I have it ready for him, so I'm ready to go.
Okay. Yeah, so hit him with that first, and then I'll hit the next 2 parts here.
All right, this is basically just you're going to love listening to this because these are just like my 9 favorite relievers in baseball. So if we have a 9-man bullpen with a 5-man rotation, I think I would want a late inning mix between Trevor McGill, Cade Smith, and Griffin Jacks as just a couple monster righties with crazy fastballs and breaking balls who can do it. I've realized going down and making this, I didn't really have a lot of crazy arm angles, so I added some at the end. But then I want Jeremiah Estrada is probably the best underrated fastball in baseball. Padres reliever who the Cubs for some reason let go for nothing when they had no bullpen all of last year. Would have been a playoff team each of the last 2 years. They had used him to his max potential. Brian Abreu, who's one of my favorites from the Astros, just came from like nothing, barely signed as an international prospect, was like a basketball player in Dominican Republic. They're like, can you throw a baseball? He was like, yeah. They would like, throw it like this. And all of a sudden he's throwing the mid-90s. Now he's just a freak with a crazy sweeper on the Astros. Ryan Walker is one of my new favorites on the Giants. I don't love him as much as a closer role because he's a demon sinker guy, but demon sinkers aren't as good without crazy velocity. He's 94, 95 guy, but I'd love him as a middle reliever in my dream no all-star bullpen. And I want my weird arm slots for my lefties. So give me Tyler Rogers, because why not? I always want Tyler Rogers in there to change the eye level. AJ Puck, and then Matt Strahm. Those are my favorite lefty relievers in baseball right now.
Okay, I like it. Yeah, those are very James picks. Yeah.
Yeah, I made Denzel Nunez tip the cap to him, but he's not here yet.
Yeah, no, of course not. All right, second part of this 3-part question. Mark, need a question from me. So, Mark, favorite bagel order in New York City? This one's easy. It's obvious. If I could eat cheese, it would be a part of it. So, we would do plain bagel, Taylor ham, egg and cheese. Just keep it simple, keep it straight, nice and easy on a plain bagel, and you don't toast the bagel. You can't be toasting bagels out here in New York. That's an insane move.
No, I like the everything sometimes, but if I'm also not a good man, but that was back in the day.
I can get behind everything. I just prefer the plain bagel, of course.
I also think the everything is something you have to do like 1 out of 3 bagel orders. Dodgers. Like I don't think you could really do everything every time. Everything's powerful, especially with the Taylor Hammond there. So it's like that's a punch. You can't really do it every single time you do one. And then his last question was for me. Can't leave out James. He's really taking a shot. James, favorite vacation from the 24 season, 25 off season. Yeah, I like to travel a lot. I mean, you guys probably see on this podcast. Sometimes I move around. I've been doing the show from Thailand and Vietnam for the last few weeks. I don't know, but I think you know this too. Like just peel behind the curtain. Like I'm not traveling as like vacation. Like I'm traveling as like shoestring, spending so little money, like $1 Anthony Bourdain noodle dishes inside the street. Like I'm staying in like $15 hotels that are pretty nice. Like it's just I'm out here. I'm a credit card point hound. I'm a maven. So these flights are always like half off, 75% off because I'm just on top of my credit card points all the time. But yeah, this Asian one's been really cool. It's been really fun traveling around here. I gotta say, being in Vietnam, this is a Yankee town. The Yankees 100% own Vietnam. The Mets own New York City, but the Yankees own Vietnam. There's Yankee sweatshirts, Yankee jackets, Yankee Nike shoes. The Yankees are all over clothing in Vietnam, everywhere. I did see an off-brand Lindor jersey in a cheap off-brand shop the other day. I put in the Mets'd Up Instagram story. But while the Mets now own New York City, the Yankees 100% own Vietnam, and I will give them that.
They can have Vietnam. Not worried about the Mets reach out there in Vietnam, in Ho Chi Minh City.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm in Hanoi right now. This is a great city. I think I like it better than Ho Chi Minh. But it's been a nice trip. Going to be back really soon, though, right when spring training games start. Planned this really, really well to hit that exactly when it happens. I'm excited to be back because once we get back, and I kind of did this on purpose, too. Once I get back, it's fucking baseball season.
Oh, yeah. No.
Like the time between...
March 1st is lock in.
The time between the Super Bowl and I guess even the championship games, because you have that 2-week break. The Super Bowl fucking sucked this year anyway. The time between the championship games and the first spring training game, that's the hell month for us. So I wanted to get rid of that in the best way I thought to possibly could. And now it's just it's go time.
Yeah, no, I can't wait. I'm super excited. I was texting with a friend, shout out Ernie, and I was like, can't wait till March 1st. It's like I'm going to Vegas from the 27th of February to March 2nd. I was like, as soon as I get off that plane back in New York in March, I was like, it's just Mets baseball 100% of the time. Yeah, and I can't wait.
Juan Soto's on the Mets. Like, if you guys seen this stuff on social media this week, like Juan Soto is on the fucking Mets. Like, I'm clicking like on every single thing that's posted about him. I'm watching every single video. Like, it's incredible just to see anything happening to this guy in this team because it's still surreal. Like, I just can't believe it.
Yeah, no, it's pretty incredible, and we will be talking about that and so much more as we keep going on with the Mets'd Up Podcast. Make sure you guys are subscribed to our YouTube channel, Mets'd Up Podcast, over there. If you're listening to us, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, drop us a rating, drop us a review, download, and subscribe. And don't forget to follow us on all our social media at Mets'd Up on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. We appreciate you guys so much. You can follow James on Twitter at
James_Shiano.
I'm Draft Nick Mark with a C. We will catch you guys all on the next episode. Thank you for listening and watching, and we'll see you next time. Peace.
Peace out. Let's go Mets.